Good morning and welcome to Aliyah Yomi. Today we're going to be beginning Parshas Emor. Parshas Emor is a parsha with 124 psukim. Our first Aliyah consists of 15 of those psukim running from Perek Chof Aleph Pasuk Aleph to Tes Vav. The main topic of our Aliyah is the holiness of the Kohanim, of the priests. We learn in the first section of Aliyah about a regular priest. Emor el Kohanim b'nei Aaron v'amarta aleihem. Where Moshe tells Aaron to tell the other Kohanim, L'nefesh lo yitama ba'amav. So the first thing is the restriction. They cannot become impure. They cannot come into contact with the dead unless it is 7 of their close family members. That means to say, if a Kohen's wife, God forbid, father or mother, son or daughter, brother or sister who passes away, they may, in that nuclear fashion, go and attend their funeral and become involved in the tumas meis, the impurity of coming in contact with the dead. But anybody outside of that, a Kohen may not. Then we hear about the fact that there are restrictions in terms of shaving their beards, their heads, or making any cuts or mutilations on themselves. Why? Because they are holy to Hashem. Ki Hashem lechem Elokehem hem kodesh. They're bringing the bread of God, and they are holy. That's why there's also restrictions as to who a Kohen can marry. You cannot marry a woman who is a zonah, chalala, or isha grusha me'isha la yikachu, so a divorcee, a woman who has some sort of question about her lineage, also may not be married to them, to a Kohen as well. We also hear that there's a more severe punishment for adultery for a bas Kohen, for the daughter of a Kohen. The end of the Aliyah then talks about the Kohen Hagadol Me'echov, the Kohen who's greater than his brothers. He is anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha, with anointing oil, and in this case, he has more severe restrictions in that he is not allowed to become tameh, to become impure for even his closest of relatives. He's not allowed to leave the sanctuary. He is not allowed to impurify the sanctuary of Hashem. He's not allowed to marry even an almanah, a widow. There are very great restrictions on the lifestyle of this Kohen Gadol. So a few basic questions. Number one is why is this here now? So Rav Soloveitchik points out, if you read this in conjunction with the end of Parshas Kedoshim, the end of Kedoshim talks about the importance of the moral life led by Israel to stay in the land of Israel. Part of that involves the way that they are supposed to have sexual moral conduct, the relationships that cannot be had, which is immoral to live in the land of Israel. Pursuing, and as we ratchet up the Kedusha, as we ratchet up now a subsection of Israel who have extra special holiness, they have extra special laws which relate to who they can marry and the relationships they're involved with as well. So we're moving upwards in that respect. It's in a certain sense we're zoning in on a more specific subgroup of what it means to be holy as well. That's what seems to be the movement over here. Now, you'll notice an interesting point, and that is in the first pasuk in our Aliyah, there is a repetition, which is Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Emor el HaKohanim b'nei Aaron. Moshe is told to tell the priests, the children of Aaron, V'amarta aleihem, and tell them. The word Emor, therefore, is repeated. Emor v'amarta. Very famous question. Rashi addresses this, and Rashi says that the reason is to tell the elders to teach the youngers. To tell all the elders to teach the youngers. Now, the interesting thing about this, the question that one could ask about this, is that there are a number of other instances in the Torah where the elders have to warn and to remind the younger generation, those who are not yet bar b'nei chiyuva, those who are not yet obligated of these obligations. So when it comes to eating shiratzim, insects or blood, there are a number of drashas made by Chazal about how the elders need to tell the youngers. They need to educate. But there's no repetition. It isn't as if there's an extra word, Emor v'amarta, to tell that. What's unique about this case? So it is interesting. Rav Sorotskin has a very beautiful observation, the Rav of Lutsk, and it explained by Rav Nathan Lopez Cardozo, has a very beautiful insight into education over here, and that is the following, is that when it comes to education, education is a difficult business in that there are two educational influences. There are the parents, and there is the street, or the surrounding, the environment in which the child grows up in as well. So it's important, first of all, to make sure, to ensure that one's child is in an environment which reflects one's home. If one's telling the child one thing and then the street or the environment is telling the child another thing, it's very hard for that child to grow up in a coherent fashion. But let's say you have now a Kohen who is being brought up. So a Kohen over here is living in an environment which, on the one hand, is similar to his, in the sense that it is Judaism, there's Torah and mitzvahs, hopefully. But on the other hand, there are certain restrictions which, by the nature and the virtue of his hierarchical status, is different to those around him. The other children in school do not have the same restrictions. He may not go to the cemetery. He may not engage in certain relationships. There's certain things that, as this child grows older, there'll be more and more restrictions as to what they can or cannot do. Which means to say there is a certain dissonance between those they grow up with, their friends who they live among, and the values at home. As well, which is why the Torah goes out of its way over here, Emor v'amarta, to tell the Kohanim that their educational task is even more challenging than the regular educational task, in that there is an element of personal distinctiveness and there's an element of communal awareness as well. Both of those need to be emphasized. This is certainly true in many of our situations where sometimes we're in environments which are adverse or perhaps somewhat different, or they're children with different values to our own, and how important it is to be able to make sure that our children appreciate their uniqueness and their space and place and their responsibility. Now, another question is the mitzvah over here of not cutting themselves or pulling out their hair. That seems to be a mitzvah which is applied to Israel as a whole as well. So Rashi says that is true, but the fact that it's repeated here by the Kohanim, it's repeated in a different way, which that different way is actually a lesson in how it's done universally as well. So as an example, over here it says it's Rosh Hashanah Yifram, so it talks about that the hair cannot be, the whole head, it cannot be made bald, and that is an extra detail which we do not have when it was said by the rest of Israel as well. So these two mitzvahs interplay with each other as well. Now, what is the mitzvah of v'kidashtoi, to make him holy? That's what is said in the middle of Aliyah. Rashi says that it refers to certain practices that we are expected to give respect to Kohanim above others. So, as an example, if people are sitting down for a zimun, for benching, the Kohen is expected to be offered the zimun first. Let him wash his hands first. There's numerous things where a Kohen gets precedence. In fact, in the last Mishnah in Harios, there is a whole hierarchy about who one saves first, who one returns the lost objects to first. A lot of this plays into it as well. It is worthwhile noting that in that Mishnah in Harios, it does describe that if you have a mamzer who has a Talmid Chacham, so a person who's, we'll call it, yichus status is compromised somewhat, but they are a Talmid Chacham, they are a wise sage, they would still precede the person who is a Kohen, who is an Amaretz, a priest who is in ignoramus. So there is an element of meritocracy even within the framework of hierarchy as well. It's worthwhile noting, Rav Hirsch points out that the Kohen's restrictions over here are all outside of the Mishkan restrictions. So, for instance, who he marries, how he mourns, his hair cutting, these are all how he lives his life. Which means that the Kohen's unique Kedusha is not as a function of the fact that that when he serves inside the Mikdash he has certain restrictions. It's rather because he serves in the Mikdash that affects the way he lives his life outside of it as well. The real aspect of Judaism is that it's not just about being in church on Sunday and then we can do wherever else we want it to be. To understanding this, Rav Hirsch understands that in order for the Kohen to act as a Kohen, it needs to be wherever he lives. In fact, the word Kohen, he says, is related to the word kivun, which means direction. A Kohen is a person who lives a directed moral life. He is a compass to those around him. And for that to be true, it's how he lives his day-to-day life, more than even the way he lives in the sanctuary, which is more of a limited scope of what he actually does during his year. Now, why is the Kohen Gadol more severe than the regular Kohen? Why can he not even be tameh for it, make himself impure for his own family? So Rav Solomon points out that it's if you look at the psukim in our Aliyah, it's because he's never supposed to leave the sanctuary. It's not, the rules are not changed for him. It's just he's not allowed to leave. A regular Kohen is not allowed to do these things inside the Beis Hamikdash either. The Kohen Gadol simply is not allowed to leave. So the restriction actually is in the fact that it's almost as if he is always in the sanctuary, and that's why these laws govern him as well. Rabbeinu Bechaya points out when we describe our Kohen HaGadol Me'echov, it doesn't just mean to say it's descriptive; it could also mean prescriptive. In other words, he's supposed to be somebody who is more elevated than the rest by 5 different matrices: benoi, in beauty, b'koach, in strength, b'osher, in riches, b'chachma, in wisdom, b'chavod, and in honor. And he goes on to say, "V'im ein loi And if he doesn't have some of these qualities to the degree they can, they need to give him those extra qualities as well. They need to supplement them because he is meant to be a leader. So without walking away from Aliyah with the following two difficulties or two challenges. Number one is that this Aliyah challenges us on the level of the notion that there is a hierarchy in Kedusha. In a multicultural democratic society, it's very uncomfortable idea saying that one person is more holy than another person. It's a meritocracy. Everybody can do what they want. Everybody is entitled to become what they want, even though the democracy suffers from the currency of money being the bar of access for many things. But nonetheless, at least the idea of somebody being more holy is a foreign concept and a concept which we seek to embrace because it is a traditional concept, something which is unique and is not appreciated by society around us. But another aspect to that is that Kedusha reflects a requirement of sacrifice of rights. In a society that's governed by rights, where everybody believes a certain fundamental rights that they have, nobody's willing to sacrifice those ideas or those rights, or what a person feels is coming to them. In order to get Kedusha, the Torah is telling us that the more Kedusha there is, the more sacrifice of personal whims there are. You cannot just marry who you want. You cannot just go where you want. You cannot think that your personal experience is going to supersede your station in society. Kedusha comes with a degree of sacrifice. These are two very important lessons to be learned from Aliyah. With this, we close the first Aliyah in Parshas Emor. In the meantime, a wonderful and meaningful